everyone. This is Bob,
And this is Archie.
and today we're going to talk about, is tech writing still a valid career? And I think there's a lot to talk about with AI and changes in the industry and the evolution of things. So, let's get started. First of all, let's talk about AI. We're going to talk about, has it taken the place of a tech writer? And we'll go to Archie for his opinion.
Yeah, well, I'm not a big fan of AI in general, but I will say that I can see where it's valid, where its value would be in making certain things easier, even for a technical writer. But from what I've seen anyway, and the fact that at least at this particular stage, AI is still one of those things where it sometimes generates garbage, and it doesn't necessarily, you're not necessarily getting the true scoop because basically it's what is it, a data aggregator, right? So it's looking, it's got a bank of a million, billion pieces of data, and it looks through all of it and comes up with something. I mean, I've seen jobs posted for English speakers and various language speakers to work for an AI company to help them make what the AI engine spits out more readable and more like English. So there's still a lot of work to do. Maybe in 10 years, it'll be able to do some of the rudimentary technical writing tasks, but it's not even close now.
And
So
I agree. I think it's more of a writing tool. I mean,
yeah,
a long time ago, we went from typewriters to evolving into Microsoft Word, and then it including a lot of typo checks and then editing skills and stuff like that. AI, to
and
me,
actually even before Word, there was command line
command.
editing.
Yeah, well, there was that
If you
too.
remember those, yeah,
Yes, I remember coding my words.
there you go.
But it's I think it's part of the natural evolution, and I think it's not a game changer at this point. I want to bring up a few examples. AI is really good. Let's talk about the pros here. AI is really good if you're not a professional writer and you need a style and you need to take all these words. You still have to write something. I've talked to people. You still have to write something, and what it will do is it'll take those words and then smooth it out for you, give you a nice style. You can do all that. Again, it's a tool. It's not a content creator, which is what technical writing
Okay,
can do. And I've seen ads. I don't know if you've seen ads on Adobe, you know, doing sales
okay.
brochures and stuff like that. Yeah, great. You write up what you basically want to do. It helps you. It helps create the brochure for you, but it's still a tool. You still need to give it that
Well,
information.
do you think it's good enough? Because I mean, there is a segment of technical writing where engineers would write copy and then hand it to a writer to clean up. Do you think AI is good enough to do that particular job?
I think in some cases, yes, because
Okay.
if the information is there, then now here's where technical writing comes in. I want to talk about a real story, something that happened to me quite a long time ago. I was working for a startup company, and there was really only one engineer. I mean, very small startup company, and she had no time for me, and quite legitimately, she was doing everything. So she had written handwritten notes to herself and just kind of scattered around, and it was all about how to install the product. And it was missing a lot of pieces. So they hired me to come in. I couldn't really talk to her, so I grabbed all her notes, made sense of it because I know the concepts, and I was able to put together an installation process. It was missing a few steps, but I went back to her essentially with a guide, and she just looked at me completely stunned. Like, how did you do this? Okay, that's the value of a technical writer. As I did it, I knew some things that had to be in there. There was obvious steps like turn the power on or other things, and then I took less of her time because all she needed to do was fill in the missing steps.
Right.
AI cannot do that.
Right. Yeah, and I think this is going back to oh, never mind. I lost the train of thought, but I was I guess I lost it. It'll come back to me. But it's the kind of thing where um, a writer, in terms of the value of a technical writer, we've talked about this in many different forms. It is that thing of filling in a gap where there's no information. I think we exchanged some emails, and one of the things I was thinking about is that, yeah, it's kind of like the word technical, the term technical writer, the title technical writer is not really that's the part that's probably not valid anymore because technical writing is very narrow in terms of what, at least the way people think of it. I mean, it's still to the point where I know around here I meet people and they ask me, "Oh, what did you do before you retired?" And I say I was a technical writer, and it's kind of like you can see the bubble above their head, like what? So I'd have to explain to them what it was.
Even
So
here?
yeah, so I think the technical writer as a term, and even as a it's not a valid description
It's
of
not a
what
complete description, yeah, definitely.
of what we do. Right, right.
Yeah,
And even when you think about it, just from an English point of view, writer is a noun, and technical is an adjective, and that adjective doesn't give full value to the word writer. But anyway, I'll let that go.
hey, you're showing your writing skills here. Come on. No, information developer is a better term because that's exactly what we do. We create content, and it's not just
And I actually and the one I suggested was knowledge developer
knowledge
because I think
developer. Yeah.
because I think whether you think about the inputs that a technical writer could provide, like to a lot of these databases. Oh, I've had jobs where technical writer comprised me populating a knowledge base. Okay, so I was indeed a knowledge creator,
Yeah.
a knowledge coordinator, manager. I wasn't
Another
really writing documents. Yeah.
another
So
aspect of that. And since you mentioned the word documents, I'm going to go into is documentation really necessary? And
hmm,
in a lot of cases, the UI, the user interface, has gotten so good to give you the information that you need that you don't need to go to a book or anything else. However, that doesn't cover all cases. One of the things I'm going to talk about is cybersecurity. I worked for a startup a little over a year ago, and the problem they had was that customers were complaining they had no idea the scope of the product, how it fit into their network, or exactly how it worked. There were blogs that the engineers had written, there were white papers, but nothing that tied all of it together. So when I came in, I pulled these disparate pieces of information, and then I also worked with the product, and I put together what I called loosely an overview guide. And it said, okay, this is the entire system. These are all its components. I explained each and every component, and I said how it fits into your cloud or your network, and it gave all the answers that the customers were asking. The information was out there, but not accessible. They had to go hunt for it, and a customer's not going to do that. If you
well,
want
I think
if you want me to buy your product, you better give me the information. That was a guide. It was an online guide, but it was a guide, and it was absolutely necessary to the success of the company. That's where I think
and,
technical writing is still valid.
and I think and I guess I also want to differentiate between software, which I think is what most of your experience, at least in the last 10 or 15 years, has been in, and other areas of where writers are used. And so I think believe it or not, hardware is still being made. There's still complicated mechanical and physical devices being created in the medical device field, which is what I'm coming from. Um, the documentation is mandatory, but in other hardware development things, well, I'll use a simple example like a car, or you get those huge manuals with cars, and although most people know the basics of how to drive a car, one of the things that the auto industry needs to work on is to standardize some of that stuff. You buy a European car, things are in different places than if you buy an American car,
Oh yeah.
all this other stuff. Yeah, and I remember the last vehicle I bought was a Mercedes, and and usually you get into the car, you think, I'll just start driving, I'll figure out all this stuff. But at some point, I got to the point where I did not know how to turn the lights on. so I had to go to the manual and read how to turn the lights on, how to get the headlights to work.
Yeah.
So,
And another
so
annoying thing is clock
yeah,
setting. How do I change that clock, especially when we do daylight savings time?
yeah. So I mean, so especially when it comes to complex hardware devices, physical devices, documentation is still it's still necessary because the interface, yes, the dashboard is a UI in effect, but it's a mechanical UI, so it has some intuitiveness, but at the same time, it still needs to be explained.
Yes,
Especially now with well, there's a lot of software in cars now too, so that's the other thing.
absolutely. So what we're looked like we're coming to the point where we're saying, yeah, documentation is still necessary. There's a lot of places where it's still required. Technical writing is still a valid career, but um, it's also mitigated. It's not as prevalent because there are cases where, well, software UI, for example, can explain itself. There's words that to be written in the software itself that explains what to do next when a customer is faced with a decision point. That's part of the user interface. And technical writing, or information development as we call it, is a part of that too. Creating those words, making sure the person understands it, and making sure that they can make that task. Um, Apple's pretty good about um, you being able to figure out what you need to do, in
So
different
I'm
apps.
actually thinking that the technical writing is evolving. I don't, I'm as we're talking about it, I'm thinking it's not necessarily becoming less important. I think it's just evolving.
Oh
I
yeah.
know the last company I worked with, it was really kind of funny because the product got canceled. But what was exciting about it is there was a young UI guy, a UI engineer or whatever you want to call him, and he was when I came in, he was really excited to start working with me as a technical writer because he had all these ideas, but he knew that um, the UI and the documentation and the words on the UI and how they merge with the documentation and help each other was critical. I mean, the best UI guy I'd ever worked with because he didn't think of himself as this standalone stovepipe where, oh, I'm a UI guy. That's all I do, and I don't want to talk to anybody else. He was like, oh, guys, got to work with the technical writer. We got to coordinate this stuff, which is the right way to think.
Is
So I was
absolutely the
really
right
excited
thing.
about that project. Yeah. So it's unfortunate that we didn't actually get to create anything, but I was excited to work with somebody who thought that way. So
Yeah, and you're right about development. I mean, I'm sorry, evolution. Um, I mean, it was always the written word, but now it's not. It's, text that appears on field names, text that appears in the UI itself, text, um, visual. I mean, I've done videos now, to help people onboard or learn the product. You can see a lot of videos. A lot of people learn visually instead of just reading.
so
Um,
that's YouTube's whole business
yeah,
strategy. I mean, you can figure out anything. You go to YouTube and there's a video how to do it.
if there's a good
So
video.
um,
I've seen some bad
yeah,
ones.
yeah. The good news is that everybody's doing the same. So I mean, what was I trying to do not too long ago? I was trying to I needed to replace the battery in my Honda, and they in the Hondas the battery is under all this crap, right? I'm like, how do I get this thing off? How do I get to the battery? And of course, there were several videos on how to do it, and I found one that actually made sense. I followed it, you know. But and I think, and again, who does those videos? I mean, that theoretically, in a corporation anyway, would be the job of a technical writer. I mean, when I made a manufacturing document, a procedure for how to build a coil, and yeah, there were certain things that couldn't be described in words because it was too manual. In medical devices, a lot of this stuff is hand built. It's not. It doesn't come off an assembly line. It's a guy. It's a guy sitting there builds the coil from start to finish. One man, one coil, takes about a week. You know, and there were certain things that he did that I said, yeah, I can't describe this in words. So I had the guy start from the beginning and videotape it, and then have him talking while he's doing it, and that covered that piece of it.
Yeah, the
So
old adage, a picture's worth 1,000 words. Well, video's even more.
exactly. So and I will say that manufacturing document was one of those things, same sort of thing as what you were talking about. But when I came into the company, the process for how to manufacture this complex coil, it was part of an MRI device. It was basically rough engineering notes in a binder. And basically, what was going on is that the guys on the line who were building the coil, the engineer would just walk them through the process of how to put this thing together. and then watch them do it and train them that way. They didn't read anything. But obviously,
Yeah.
that's a very inefficient way to do it. And from a FDA point of view, um, that's not acceptable because it has to be repeatable and all this other
Right.
stuff. It has to be
Exactly.
exactly repeatable. So, so my job there was to go and that's what I did. I ended up sitting with this guy on the line from start to finish, watching him build this coil, taking pictures of everything, and then writing up a procedure. And as it turns out, um, they had a surprise FDA inspection at Christmas time, and that week between Christmas and New Year's, nobody. The FDA did a surprise inspection, and I was on vacation. I was gone, right? And but I had left the draft of my document on my desk, and because they were going to get a finding. FDA was going to give them a finding, and they went into my office and found the draft and told, "Oh no, see, we're working on it," and so they didn't get the finding.
Save the day. But
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
and that's another area where documentation is critical. Um, but again, I'm going to go back to what you said. Maybe the term technical writer is archaic. We've gone way
Yeah,
past that. It is information. We are providing information, and information is no longer a written word. It could be visual, could be audio, could be a combination of things, could be animation. It could be a lot of things. It's presenting information to a user to get your point across or to give them the information that they need. We're still creating content. And I'm going to go back to AI for just a second. And it seemed to me, and maybe you're right, in the future, it will be better. But if the information doesn't exist, AI can't create the content.
right, right. That's right. And so, I mean, I think in the future, as AI gets bigger and bigger and bigger, one of the jobs of technical writer is to um, improve the input. Bad data in, garbage in, garbage out. And so part of the AI's problem is it has got a lot of garbage in its database. And so I think one of the future jobs for technical writers will be to clean up the input to AI so that when it spits it out, it's better
Yeah.
stuff.
Or create brand new information that's never been seen before, and provide that information. So the writing skills will slowly not be as critical as they have been. But
Okay, so I'm gonna disagree with that. I think writing is
okay,
critical.
the editing skills. Let me put that.
The mechanical skills, the mechanical skills of writing, how to punctuate, how to capitalize, how to spell, all that stuff, critical, still critical. And that skill is becoming, what's the word? Um, harder to find. There aren't that many people who do it well anymore.
Well, yeah, you got a point there, but we can start going into education and stuff like that. I one of the points I think I'd
But
like to make is that writing skills is
yep.
so critical, not just to a writer, but to a developer, to a salesperson. I mean, being able to convey information clearly and effectively is an important skill set, whether you choose to have writing as a career or not. It is an important skill set for many careers.
I will say, I'll give you an example of that. I was working Federal Reserve in Boston, and in the IT department. And I was there to build a database, but as we were discussing how to build this database and how to distribute this information so that people can do their jobs, I finally decided to look at some of the content that the engineers were putting in there, that the IT guys were putting into this database, and it was horrible. It was absolutely unintelligible. Because the problem they had at the bank was that they'd have a problem in their network. Somebody would go out there, do all the work, do all the legwork, figure out what the problem is, and fix it, and then document. They did, and then they throw it in this. Well, it wasn't really a database. It was just a directory paper. It was garbage, right? You couldn't really retrieve anything. So what was happening was somebody would solve this problem, document it, throw it into this folder, and then the new guy would come in. A new guy would come in. That guy would leave. Let's say new guy comes in, same problem. He goes and looks for it, doesn't find it, does the whole thing all over again, figures everything out, writes it up, and throws it in this folder. So we tried to eliminate that. But then what I was finding that the write-ups of the process and the solutions was in some cases unintelligible. So one of the things I ended up doing at the bank, just going back to your point about that skill being necessary for everybody. But one of the things I did was develop a basic writing course for the IT personnel, so that they could write better stuff to go into this database. That was it. And
Effective
and at least
communication.
and exactly, at least two of those guys were like, "Yeah, I don't know how to write." So he was happy. He said he even wanted extra hours with me to learn how to write because he did not know how to do it. Writing was just not something he did, and the stuff he wrote was obvious. He did not know how to write. So, so you're right. I mean, it's a critical skill, and unfortunately, they're not really emphasizing it as much in the schools anymore. So that's what I'm saying. It's becoming a lost art, fortunately.
That and looking in LinkedIn and jobs and stuff like that, it seems to be devalued. While we got all these other tools in AI, the belief is that, oh, we don't need that anymore and we don't want to do it anyways. And I think that's going to
Yeah.
cause a lot of problems. Um, so
Well, people
people
rely
like,
on autocorrect, and we know that autocorrect is a mess because it's always it's guessing the wrong words. It doesn't understand context. Blah 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 blah. So again, I've been trying to figure out how to turn that off so I can just write.
well,
But
AI is supposed to be super autocorrect and much better.
yeah, I haven't really used AI. I know you have. I haven't, so I don't know.
Well, it's improving, but still,
Okay.
it needs a person to verify it. In the end, you still
Yeah,
got to verify that. Is that what I want? Is that include the information I need? So you still need a writer, an information developer. You need these skills in your
and I
career.
think,
Yeah.
and I guess what. Okay, so when we talk about um, so how do we get to that point? I mean, I know in some engineering curriculums they do have English courses. One of the things I was looking at, I think it was yesterday, the day before, was technical writing certification courses and what they cover. And interestingly enough, they do cover a lot of stuff that we've been talking about. Now, I'm not sure how they cover it, but it seems like at least they're thinking the same way in terms of um, how to make decisions about how to present information and because context and all this other stuff. Um, I think um, if someone wants to become a technical writer, um, I think that there's two things. I think it used to be that when you went for a job as a technical writer, there was an assumption that if you were a technical writer that you knew how to write. Now, over the years, they have found that that's a bad assumption because some technical writers come in and they really don't know basic grammar and how to write. So now some companies are giving writing tests and they're looking for certifications to say, okay, this person has a certification, so at least they have some basic writing skills. Um, and a lot of technical people, like some companies want more technical people than writers, and the technical people are not great writers, and then the editors. It's kind of a mess. One of the problems with technical writing, and this is why I'm saying the term technical writers is a bad term, is because I don't think it can be. When you say you're a technical writer, you could be almost anything,
Yes. It's
right?
too vague.
And that's not helpful. Yeah,
Yes. I agree completely, and it also gives the opinion, or if that you think that you're just gonna be doing the written word, and writers don't do that anymore. It's about information, and it's not just about the written word. It's about presenting information, about passing on knowledge in such a way that you learn or are able to perform a task or provide the information you need to make decisions.
and we've also talked about this again. There are again. I think this is a part of technical writing that's fading away fairly rapidly. Is this business of just doing writing, of taking copy from someone and fixing, cleaning it up, or even just
Yeah, that
yeah,
part's going away.
yeah.
And
Yeah, I mean, I think you'll still see it at paying at $25 an hour or 40,000 a year or 50,000 a year. There are some companies that still need that, but yeah, that don't see too many of those jobs anymore.
no, and these new writing tools like in AI and stuff are going to
Yeah,
help um, eliminate those type of professions. Well, you expect to
So
do more,
I know,
anyways.
well, I know one of the things we wanted to talk about, or at least we had suggested, was um, why become a technical writer. Do we have time to talk about that a little bit?
But yeah, yeah, let's do that.
Okay, okay,
Why
all right.
become a technical writer?
Um,
Or the other half of that is,
yeah.
where's you're a technical writer? Where's your career going?
Okay. Yeah. I mean, because okay. So I mean, for me, um, okay. So I'm fascinated by electronics, and I'm a hardware guy. Obviously, this is kind of why I ended up in medical devices. That's another long story, but I've always been, I was one of those keys kit, and I know my listeners don't know what that is, but back in the old days, if you were an
Back in the
audiophile,
very
somebody
old
who like
days.
very old days, you could buy these kits from a company called Kit, and you could build an amplifier, you could build a receiver, you could build speakers, and they had well written by technical writers instructions on how to put these things together and what the circuits did and how they worked and all this other stuff. So it's a really great way to learn electronics, and I love that stuff. So I went to school for engineering, and engineering has nothing to do with that, as I found out. Um, so that's how I ended up in technical writing, and technical writing kind of saved me. If there was no such thing as technical writing, I probably would have just flunked out of college because there was no place for me to go. Well, I shouldn't say that. I would have just majored in English, and I would have stopped it. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. But technical writing was a savior because it allowed me to combine my technical knowledge and interest with a skill that I had because I was a natural writer anyway. I've always been a good writer. Um, so that was my reason for going into technical writing. But I think it, after my long career in technical writing, what I loved about it in the end was the fact that I didn't get bored. You know, I guess if you're a certain type of engineer, you can be stuck doing the same thing year after year after year and working on the same products and types of products year after year after year. Technical writing, not so. I can work on something for a couple of years, and if I feel like it, I can just go to another company and work on something else, or even within the same company, work on something, and just come up, learn a whole new set of technologies, work with a whole other bunch of different people, develop different kinds of information. So it's like a new job, a new profession every couple of years.
But it's also the same basic skills. The skill set that you had were applicable to whatever you were doing before, whatever you're doing now, and whatever you're going to do in the future. That's the
Yes,
technical writer part of it.
that's right. That's
And
that's right.
that's why being
So, but
technical
yeah,
writer is understanding is, well, we've talked about this, understanding the concepts, but being
yeah,
able to
yeah.
provide that overview look, say, gee, what do the customer, the reader, whoever that person may be, what do they need? And that's always a very basic question in your for a technical writer.
But if you want to become, but in terms of if you I'm starting to get noises. I start to see noises about a lot of people wanting to get into technical writing, and I always wonder what their motivation is. Is it that um, they're just bored with whatever it is they're doing, and they think that they would that the technical writing is something that they can do? Because I guess what we're trying to say here is that to be a good technical writer, you do have to have a passion about information and how to present information. And even, I mean, it's really funny because I know there was an influx of teachers in the technical writing profession a while back, and you would think that someone who is a professional teacher, someone who's about presenting information so people can learn, would be a good technical writer. But it turns out a lot of them weren't good technical writers
Yeah,
because they focused more on the words on the page as opposed to
instead of the
presenting and
concepts
teaching
and
them.
the real information.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah, I've run across
yeah,
that. Yeah, it's about, we've talked about this before. You need to understand the concepts, all of what's going on with your product, the technical concepts, the everything. You don't need to know the
so want to be a
details, but you need to know the concepts.
yeah. So if you're interested in technical writing, um, again, I think this is why the word technical writer, the term technical writer is so bad because I think somebody even wanting to become a technical writer sees that title and thinks that it's all about writing. And really, writing is well, for me, writing is the least important part of it. It's the kind of thing. It's what you do at the last. It's the last thing you do is write.
Yeah.
Right. You need to know how to do it, and you need to know how to do it well. But that's not That's not the be all and end all.
So
In
what
fact, it's a minor part of technical writing.
so what we're saying is technical writing is still a valid career, but it has evolved and it has changed, and it's not just about writing anymore. It's about presenting information in whatever form is needed. So you need to have that type of skill set too. You need to understand what the user's doing and how they're doing it and what format, whether it be visual, audio, written, whatever, is going to be best for them to perform that task or to absorb that information. Now,
And I know you've talked about this in the past as well. Is that the whole idea of transitioning from a technical writer to a UI developer, let's say? Because I actually think that UI and technical writing should probably be combined. I mean, over my prediction, I probably won't be alive when this happens, but in the next 10 to 15 years, I think that's what's going to happen. There won't be technical writers. There'll be user interface or user experience developers, and that will include the technical writing. So it'll probably
yes.
end up being one person who has a background in both things,
Oh,
and
one
they'll call
team.
that something. I think the way companies work these days, it'll probably be one person because teams cost teams cost money. Um, but it'll probably be someone who has two skill sets. Someone who
Well,
can design a UI and can also write the copy that goes with that UI and coordinate all of it
and let's go
without,
back to that
yeah,
question of where is technical
yeah,
writing headed, and I think you just brought that up, and I can give a perfect example of that in one of the companies I was at not too long ago. Um, we had a UX developer, and we had me as the information developer or technical writer, and we
right.
worked closely together, okay, to make sure that the correct information was there. Um, and the best example was we had all this visual stuff and then the details of the UI of why you would use that in any particular situation needed more information. That's where I came in to write the guide about okay, you've got a decision to make, um, and I'm going to give you the information you need so you can make a reasonable decision for your situation. Additionally, we needed more visual um, startup information. It's like people would turn on the product and not be exactly sure what to do. The written word wasn't good enough. I wrote the script for a video. My UX developer had the tools and a better skill set for me visually to create that whole visual, video thing, and using my script. And so we worked together, fine tuned it, and we came across with something that impressed the CTO, the chief technical officer, and the CEO, and everybody was incredibly happy with it. So there was a merging there. Um, the tool skill set was a bit different. My tool skill set was a little different than hers. She was much better at doing the visual, and I was much better
Right.
at putting together the words and the information.
Right. I mean, ultimately, well, I mean, again, talking about the technical writing as a profession and where it's going. I mean, one of the things I like about technical writing is when I talked about the Federal Reserve Bank, I was hired there as a what was it? Um, well, we were creating a database. We were creating a database of information, a retrievable information database. So, what do they call those people? It's information science. It's like a librarian,
Oh, okay.
creating a creating a taxonomy for putting in and retrieving information in the database. So that they hired me, a technical writer, to do that. And that was so far away from. I didn't write anything there. My whole job there was to gather and understand the information that was needed, who needed it, and when, and on what context they needed it, how to get the data into the database in a proper way, and how to get it out of the database in a proper way. And see, but they hired a technical writer to do that. Again, a very senior technical writer because it had nothing to do with writing. And that's what was so cool about it.
But it
And
had a lot to do with
that's what
information.
information. And that's what's cool about the profession. And like I said, the name needs to be changed, but the profession is evolving. I mean, that was one job I had. Well, I said I did nothing. I did very little writing, and then there was another job where I was at a small company. There were like 10 employees, and they gave me the task of updating the entire corporate website. And so again, I had to develop. Okay, so what kind of information do we want to present to people looking at this website and getting interested in this company. So I had to work with all of the people in the company to write up stuff about what they're doing and how they're doing it, and what impact what this company did was they helped companies get through the FDA process for like their first medical device offering. So we had all people who were involved in different aspects of that. So I had them, so I had to work with them to write up, what kind of work do they do? Give me a case study of something that you did. And so they wrote those things up. I edited it. I put it together in this website. And as it turns out, the CEO's daughter was a graphic designer at college. So of course, he was getting free graphic design. So I came up with this cool graphic design. I was working with a vendor who's who's doing the back end development and all this stuff. So again, I didn't do any writing, but here I am. I'm a technical writer, and this is what I'm doing. And so that's what's fun about technical writing, because it's one of these umbrella terms for jack of all trades. At least that's the way I think of it.
Yeah.
And that's what I am. I am a jack of all trades.
Okay, so I think it's probably time to recap what we're doing. Is technical writing a valid career? Yes, but it's evolved. It's not the same. You need to have a writing skill. You need to understand graphic and video skills. Either you have them or you can work with somebody who does have them. It's all about information. It's about understanding what information is needed, in what format, and how to present that information. It is, I think, a very valid career that's, I think, underrated in the industry right now. But I think it's incredibly important. Like I said, one company was losing sales because they didn't have the right guide, the right information in one place for customers to find and understand what their product was about. So I would say that if you're interested in information, it's a little bit of teaching, it's a little bit of writing, it's a little bit of visual. I think it's a great career. I mean, we've both made a great living off that. But think of it not as a technical writer. Think of it as an information provider. And I think that's the way it's going. And AI is nothing more than a tool to use. And I think that about wraps it up. What, do you have anything to add to that?
I was just gonna say that again. If you want to become a technical writer, think big, think beyond writing. Information development, even think beyond that. Think in terms of having an impact on on how a company is seen by the user.
Okay. Well, I think that about ends this thing. However, I want to point out that you are listening to two people who have pretty much retired from the technical writing industry, and we've had an incredible amount of experience over time. And it is what we're doing about, that's what we're talking about in this podcast. We know where things were, how they are, and where they've been, and hopefully you can learn from that. However, we have something else to add. I believe that Archie would like to talk about post-technical writing career.
Well, as for those of you who have been listening to Bob and Archie, you'll know that I recently relocated from the United States to South Africa, and so I would like to. So I'm going to be doing a podcast about my adventure, and it's an ongoing adventure.
It's been quite the adventure too. Wow.
Yeah, exactly. So that's something I'll be doing in the very near future.
Hey, we just plugged a new podcast. Can we do that? Is that a commercial? Okay. Well, folks, I hope you enjoyed this podcast. For people who want to be a technical writer, we hopefully have provided you some information about that and where it's headed, where it's going. And honestly, we found it to be an exciting career, and we think it's still a very valid, very exciting career path. And we wish everyone the best of luck in that. So, signing off, saying thank you to Matt for recording us. Thank you to Sterling-Lancaster Community TV for using their studio. And thanks, everyone, to listening.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.